Hey everybody, I'm Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation. Hey everybody, it ain't Friday, but I figured I'd go ahead and go live and watch this with you guys. So I'm just actually writing an article on Minute of Angle right now, but I figured I'd go ahead and hang out with you guys for a bit and let's watch some history unfold, because this promises to be an historic verdict, much like the Rodney King trial, the Zimmerman trial, all of this, the trial of Derek Chauvin as a result of the in-custody death of George Floyd, which kicked off a ton of rioting and mayhem over the past year or so. Depending upon how this verdict goes today, well, we may see more than what we want to. So let's go ahead and cut the volume on here and let's watch this. They haven't read the verdict yet, but the verdict is in.
At the intersection of 38th and Chicago and South Minneapolis.
And if any of my guests hop in, we'll be glad to turn the volume down a little bit and see what they have to say.
Let's take a listen to what he has.
Can you guys hear everything out there?
My thoughts are, whatever the verdict may be, that I'm trying to promote peace and not have businesses or anyone else suffer from violence and tearing down the world or the city.
I know it doesn't look good for Mr. Chauvin because, normally with a trial like this that's gone on this long, it'd take a while for the verdict to come in, and this is pretty quick. They haven't deliberated very long.
A friend of George Floyd's, he was actually there in the moments that when George Floyd died, but Maurice Hall essentially telling people to, if you're going to protest, keep it peaceful. Like him, everyone's awaiting the outcome of this verdict, and from the sounds of it, is from what we could see, more and more people are making their way to downtown Minneapolis, just waiting to hear how all of this is going to turn out. Kelsey, Amy,
just double checking to make sure everything's coming through on y'all's end, which it looks like it is. Good. Hello, Sinister Silverado, Mike, and MK Joe, and Jason Stewart. How are you guys doing?
Some of that may be a little bit tentative, but that is the plan at this point.
I've sent out some invites. If someone wants to come hop on, awesome. If they don't, well, awesome. I'll sit here with you guys, right?
They're heading out, and a lot of the parking garages have, just a line of traffic just leaving. And Minneapolis Public Schools, we should also mention, they are normal for the day, but canceling after-school activities. All right, and we know
I have to think that if I lived in Minneapolis, I would not have sent my kids to school today. They would have stayed home.
Around that area. So, Paul, what's happening down there? I know you're kind of up in that nest area. Are you able to see, are people gathering down there?
They are, Amy. I got a lot to reset now, just over the last, 10, 15 minutes.
This is the stream from, I think it's from Fox.
The Hennepin County Government Center. The crowd, I'm sure that is perhaps where Karen caught up with Maurice Hall. Really interesting to hear from Maurice Hall out and about. Of course, he was
Gunpowder Bees in the house, Joseph Lyles in the house. I want to know how they were able to find an impartial jury for this trial.
Interesting to hear him weigh
well, I don't think they will.
I
do not think they could find an impartial jury, particularly when you throw in Maxine Waters' remarks before the jury was sequestered. There's not ever going to be an impartial jury on this one. And I'm pretty sure that an appeal will be made on that fact. What do I think the verdict's going to be? I think it's going to be guilty. I think he's going to be found guilty of something. It doesn't look good for him based upon the short length of time that the jury deliberated. Typically, the longer it is, the better off it is for the defendant. The shorter the time, the better off it is for the prosecution, typically. Unless there's a slam dunk, you know what I mean? And I don't think there's a slam dunk this way. I haven't really been reporting on this because it doesn't really affect the Second Amendment. But on the other hand, it occurred to me when I saw that the verdict was about to come in that this is history unfolding, so let's watch it, right?
in perhaps as soon as 15 minutes. Again, 3 counts total.
See, Ghost Tactical's in the house. Mad Sexy, Mountain View. Mad Sexy wants to know who's being accused. Derek Chauvin, the officer that had George Floyd in custody at the time of his death. The one that had him proned out with his knee on the back of his neck. Mountain View says he thinks they have a good chance on appeal. Yeah, I think there is a good chance for a mistrial. Not a mistrial, but for the verdict to be overturned on appeal on the grounds that the jury is in no way impartial. But, you know, I've made the statement before that I think Chauvin is guilty of negligent homicide at least. For those who don't know, my background is as a correction officer for 20 years, during which time I trained in use of force and self-defense and whatnot. I was one of the trainers. I can guarantee that Officer Chauvin has heard the phrase positional asphyxia before. You never prone somebody out and obstruct their airway by placing pressure on their neck, their shoulder, etc., their chest for any appreciable length of time. And he held the man there for a while. And you know, they might be saying, you know, get off me, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Well, if they can talk, they can breathe, right? Well, that might be their last breath they're using. So you don't do it. It's negligent. I guarantee he's been trained not to do that. And in my world, that's in the agency I came from anyway. Maybe his agency's different. I don't know. In the agency I came from, huge no-no, you don't do it. Let me see. Yeah, he's catching a charge today, just a matter of how many. His defense team didn't do him any favors. Either way, I think people are going to riot again. Something to listen to while I work, says loser JJ879. David Ramirez says, Mad Sexy, you're right about that. I don't know. I think you're right. I think there's probably going to be riots either way. There's going to be civil unrest either way. Either they're going to be rioting in celebration, which is the strangest damn phenomenon I've ever seen, but, you know, it happens with sports teams and whatnot, or they're going to be rioting in protest. You know, if it's anything less than full-on murder one, let's take him out right now and hang him from the lamppost. There's going to be unrest. Jacob S. says, who is Chauvin? Derek Chauvin was the officer that held George Floyd on the ground, and during which time George Floyd died. He was charged with murder, and the verdict is now in. Hasn't been read yet, but the verdict is in.
All right, Bab Santos at 38 and Chicago. Thank you.
Mad Sexy says, Dave Ramirez, I do hope people learn from all this. So do I.
Derek Chauvin is in the courtroom right now, and a crowd is gathering outside the Hennepin County.
Uh-oh. Chauvin's in the courtroom.
The charges against second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and then second-degree manslaughter. So right now we want to bring in one of the legal analysts who's been with us since the beginning, Lee Hutton. Lee, first off, this is our first opportunity.
Yeah, it's
Let's get your reaction on the timing of this verdict.
if you're in Minneapolis,
Historically, if there's any indication,
I'd find somewhere to be other than Minneapolis. If you can't find somewhere to be, batten down the hatches and load your magazines if you got them, if they're not already, because the manure is about to hit the rotary air impeller. In other words, shit's about to hit the fan. Dave Ramirez says, damn, LA people riot every time we get a championship here. Joseph Lyle is of the opinion that if he isn't found guilty of all charges, they will riot. And if he is found guilty of all charges, they will riot. People are stupid. I can't argue with that in any substantive way. That is a fact.
In comparison to something that may have been similar with another officer or trial,
Yeah, I can't.
I've just never seen.
I can't say that you are wrong in any appreciable way.
Well, when I was looking at the evidence, the videotape is just so compelling just because you see a person die before your eyes, and not only did you see a person die before your eyes, you saw an officer who was supposed to be in your custody, in his care, and basically oblivious to what we believe is just common decency. And Jerry Blackwell, in his closing statement, couldn't have summed it up better, is that while they're making the excuse that George Floyd had a large heart, the heart that we should measure is the small heart of Chauvin. And I think that resonated with the jury. I think also juries are very keen to dismiss arguments that they don't believe made sense, because if I can sum it up, and this is just me as a trial attorney, is what the defense is trying to say is that if you're going to convict an officer, you have to be in perfect health. You can't have any other conditions of drug abuse or anything to that anybody can point to as significant contributions of a death. And the truth of the matter is we're all human, and we come with our own frailties. And the main issue is whether or not an officer's actions went beyond the scope of excessive force. And I believe the jury found that it did here.
And Lee, the jurors heard from Eric Nelson for an extended period of time in those closing arguments. That was his moment to really put into their heads, his case and sum it all up from how did he do, strength and
There, maybe that looks a little better. Let's see, what did I miss out in the chat? I apologize for the dead air there. Jason Stewart, Swearjard. What, did I cuss? Oh, shit, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Joseph Lyle says, I'm a truck driver and about to head through Minneapolis. Ooh, sorry. I hope you're all right, man. Try to stay outside it, if you can. Patriot in the Dark says, this has nothing to do with what happened that day. Dave Ramirez says, true, my son won a participation trophy riot. We lost, burn that down. Make a left at Joseph Lyle. Would this story have been as big if Chauvin was a person of color? I absolutely hate to say it, because I don't want to bring race into it, because I don't want to stoop to that level, but I don't think it would, because the media has no qualms about bringing race into it and making it about race. Because you have to remember, howdy, Big Fred, you have to remember that the agenda at the time, all last year, was get rid of Trump, get rid of Trump, get rid of Trump, stir up as much bullshit as possible, stir up as much. That way we can get Trump out of office. And it worked.
Yeah, where we go as a community, let's start there first.
Ghost says it'll be a unanimous verdict. All counts agreed on. Chauvin will be done.
Because there's a conviction. I think we have to put that in perspective, because
Mr. S says explosion just happened on 48th Street. Any news? I haven't heard any.
Is in this situation, so we have to put that in perspective. Now, putting perspective as an African American, the fact that the system.
Jacob S says he can't hear the stream for the TV. Well, I've probably got it turned down too much for you to hear it. Here, let me turn it up a little bit.
The third issue.
Can you hear it now?
How do we unify? How do we put the pieces back together to say that we're all equal, that we all have a purpose here, and that we can treat each other with humane? And that doesn't just mean you and I on the street. That means our law enforcement.
Tara Smith says, I posted pictures last year when they shot my trailer. I pull a tanker. I ain't stopping for anything, and I will not be the next driver pulled out of their truck. 1911 in truck. Yeah, nobody wants to be Reginald Denny.
And so I think this is going to allow us to revisit our own kind of personal souls.
Mountain View says, I agree on appeal. They have a good chance on overturning due to jury tampering. Yeah.
All right, Lee, we're going to check
Dan
in
L
with
says,
you
free to
here
cop.
as the afternoon goes on. Thank you for your time. And we want to remind our viewers that what you're looking at on your screen are some live pictures. The bottom left-hand corner is 38th and Chicago, also known as George Floyd Square.
Mad Sexy says, any updates on the ATT RV bombing? I don't have any information on that.
Corner, of course, live in the courtroom, and we'll take you there as soon as we can.
This, as you can imagine, for our viewers, has been an enormous amount of coverage, an enormous amount of eyeballs covering
Jacob
this
S
trial.
says it's
Both,
perfect for the audio
here
now.
in Minnesota and
it's
now
not overwhelming me
globally.
too much. I'm not
One of the
overwhelming
things
it.
Kind of flood as we wait for this jury to come
I guess
back
I could
with a
turn my
verdict.
audio
remind our viewers
up on my
exactly what
other
they had to consider.
laptop
There
here.
were
Let
three
me look.
charges, three very distinct charges. One of the charges, the third-degree murder, was one that was what we could call a late
Oh, yeah, that's
ad.
actually
The
pretty
judge
good.
Originally back
Awesome.
in October, threw it out as a
Mountain View
possible
says it'll
charge
be
and
bad
went to
news
the
no matter
appeals
what.
court
Yeah, I have no
and
doubt
got
of that.
put back into this case as a
TPC
charge
says
against
it's all
Derek
about
Chauvin.
race.
But
It's been
bring
about
our
race
viewers
since
up to speed in
07,
terms of
even
exactly
more
what
about race after
they
Mike
had to
Brown in
consider.
14.
Sure,
There is no
Randy. So
stop
we have
stooping
this
to any level. This is
second-degree
the reality of
murder charge,
society,
and in that charge,
and it's
the
time to
state
stop
needs to
coddling.
prove that Chauvin caused George Floyd's death while committing
Patriot
a
says
third-degree assault.
he bought
So the
stock
state does not
yesterday
have
in
to
Bic
prove that Derek
lighters
Chauvin
and
meant to
one-stop
kill George
gasoline.
Floyd, or even that
Mr.
he
S
meant to
says the
seriously
police scanner
hurt
is
him.
going
They
crazy.
only
I bet
have to
it
prove
is.
that the assault
As I
was
said, if you're
intentional,
anywhere
meaning,
near
Chauvin
Minneapolis,
intentionally applied
either
unlawful force to
GTFO
Floyd.
or hunker
The,
down and
former
be ready,
Minnesota
'cause
State
it's
Supreme
coming.
Court justice that I was talking to today
Either
said
way,
kind of
it's
the
coming.
comparison for this is, think of that bar fight scenario. Someone gets in a fight with somebody, they intentionally punch them, say, assault them, right?
Jason
but then
Stewart
that person
says,
might
"Take
end up
care,
falling
everyone."
and hitting
He'll
their
check
head
back
and
in a
dying.
few.
So the act itself was intentional, but the consequence was not intentional. That's what that second-degree murder charge means. Then you have this third-degree murder charge. This was the late ad. This is the one that was applied in the Mohammed Noor case and went through the state Supreme Court and could still, went through the state Court of Appeals and could still end up in Minnesota State Supreme Court. And on that
Jacob S.
third-degree
says
murder
gas
charge,
jumped last
the
night,
state needs to prove
279
that
to
Chauvin
299.
caused Floyd's death by committing a dangerous act to others. You heard one of our legal experts, Mike Bryant, talking about the Court of Appeals decided that that danger to others can just be one person. So that was one of our big questions in this case. Would the state be able to prove that Derek Chauvin's actions were dangerous?
TPC
to
says,
multiple
I'm
people?
spot
But
in,
that state
BGGR.
appeals court
On
ruling
to.
says that one person is enough for other. Then also in that definition where things get a little dicey is that
Tara
this
says,
person was
I'm
acting
from
with
Houston,
a
where
depraved
Floyd is
mind.
from.
Now, depraved mind doesn't mean any
Well,
kind of
at least
psychosis
you're
or
not in
mental
Minneapolis
illness.
today, right?
Depraved mind just means that an act was so unreasonable
2A Dave
that someone
Ramirez
was
says,
not
hit the like
thinking
button.
about the
Yeah,
dangers
I
they were
agree.
causing or
Hit it.
thinking of the consequences.
Hit it
The way
again.
it was described to me today is it's an
Thumb up
act
often,
that's
thumb up early,
reckless
right?
and careless,
Just like
and
voting.
the perpetrator shows a complete lack of regard for human life. So that's one of those pieces, Randy, of that third-degree murder charge that they have to consider. And then we have this this third and final charge. This is the second-degree manslaughter charge. And for that, the state needs to prove Derek Chauvin created an unreasonable risk and consciously took the chance of causing death or great harm to another person. I personally find these definitions so fascinating. It gives us an idea into the debate
Again,
or the
I agree.
conversations that were happening.
He's guilty
in the
of something. I don't know what the
deliberation room
specific
while the
charge
jury
would
was
be
trying to decide a guilty
in
or a not guilty
that
verdict.
venue,
It shows
but
it's not so
here
cut
it would
and
be
dry, Randy.
negligence,
It's not so simple. There
'cause
are multiple elements, multiple legal definitions
we're trained not to-
within each one of these charges, and that's why
We're
we
trained
kind
to
of figured it
minimize
might
the risk
take
of
them
positional
several days
asphyxia.
to work through all of this. But as you've been hearing, about 10 hours the jury took to deliberate before
Jermaine
announcing that they
Barnett,
had reached a
KSG
verdict.
Nation,
Yeah,
says,
thank you,
I
Hannah.
pray God
Important
gives
also
the
to
jurors
note
the
that
wisdom
jury
to make the
can
right
consider
decision.
all of the charges, can convict on all, some, or none. And that
Mel
is
the
the
Nut
case
says, I
that we
wonder if
see
just
here
MSP will
today.
burn, or will it
BC
be
O'Neilly-
all the big
O'Neilly has
cities?
been with us from the beginning as well. She's watched
MK
this
Joe
from
says,
the
I hit it
standpoint
again and the
in the
number went
morning hours
down.
of
Well, yeah,
testimony.
that'll
BC,
do
this
it.
jury, 10 hours.
Black Rain Arms
considered
Company
quick, and the
says
analysts
guilty,
are
40 years in
unanimous
prison.
They're thinking that it means some type
Now
of
Chauvin could be a real
unanimous
Nazi.
Yeah, we want to bring in trial attorney Mike Bryant for some more legal analysis. Mike,
Yeah?
can you just kind of walk us through?
He might
what
get the
this
opportunity.
process
I
is
think
like
he's
when
going to
a
be found
verdict is
guilty.
read before and
He's going to be
after?
found
What
guilty
can
of
we
something for
expect?
sure.
Well, what'll happen is the
Because,
jury will come
well,
in, everybody will
as I
stand
have
because they're the
opined,
fact finders
I
of the
think he
judge.
is.
And
I think he's
then,
guilty of something.
The judge will get
Whatever the specific
he'll-
charge
he'll
would be
ask
in
if they've come to a unanimous verdict. And
Minneapolis,
we'll
I
go
don't know,
personal
but
answer and say
yeah.
that we have, so we'll know who the foreperson is at that point. And then the judge will read it himself.
Do a
He'll
Dave
look at it,
Ramirez
and
doing
usually they
the
do that kind of
rah-rah
with a poker
cheerleader
face. They
thing.
don't
Awesome.
let it known what they see
Putting
when
out
they
the
look
link
at it.
for Budget Guns and
And
Gear
then,
Reviews
it'll go
Patreon.
back and it'll be read
Help
by
me
the
bring
foreperson
content
or
like this to
being
you.
read
I
by
appreciate it, Dave.
personnel.
Thank you very much.
And they'll go through each of the counts and they'll read them off, and we'll hear each of the counts.
Jacob S. says, are they going to have the verdict now, or are they going to bullshit their time away till the verdict? Yeah, they're going to bullshit and vamp, just like I am, until the verdict gets here.
I would assume
I mean,
tell
that's...
the courtroom, he doesn't want
We're kind of at the
emotional
at the
outbursts
mercy of
either
when the
way.
court decides to read the verdict.
And then we'll get the verdict, and people will go from there.
Let's see.
If
Hey,
you go in
Sandhills,
two
how you doing?
directions,
Brim
if
says
he's
40
found not
years.
guilty, then he's
Luger
released,
Anon
and
says
that's
innocent.
it, and it's over.
2A Dave
And if
Ramirez
he's
says,
found
thanks, Budget, for
guilty,
going live
then
on
what'll
this. Hey,
happen
thanks for
is
watching.
Then it'll continue on because he'll get
Lunger
under
Anon
mandatory
says he'll be found
custody,
innocent
which means
of
he'll
all
go back
charges.
inside,
Weston
and then he'll go
Probst
through
says, I think there'll be
pre-sentence
protests in a lot of cities, whether
investigation
they're
that may have
violent
already
everywhere,
been
time
done
will
in
tell.
court. They may be working on that, or they may not. And then there'll be some recommendations in it at some point, but it's not like TV where they just
Lunger Anon says, if found guilty of anything, appealed courtesy of Maxine Waters and overturned in appeals
We
court.
know that the state is going to ask for increased
Yeah,
charges.
yeah,
That was
very
the
well might
likely
happen. With
way
again,
that it was done
with
yesterday
Maxine
by the
Waters
defense.
sticking her oar in
So
the
if
water,
he's
no
found
pun
guilty,
intended.
that'll come
That's
into play too, 'cause the state's gonna
likely
ask
to
for him go
happen.
outside of the
It's
guidelines.
possible
And
anyway.
if he's
It's
not
more
found
possible
guilty,
than it was before she ran her mouth.
My thought in it is they're unanimous. They all saw it the same way.
Is that you don't manslaughter because he
All right,
used a
well,
knee hold
listen,
on the
and
neck
of
when
all
they
our
are trained and
reporters, we
advised
have
to use their hands
people
for the
in all
neck
the Twin
than
Cities, and you
when
can
teamed
imagine,
with
as
other
well as in the
officers.
studio here. Paul Bloom has been there from literally the first second that this
Jacob S.
began.
says, how
Paul
many
to
people do
join
you
us
think are
now.
going to be
Paul,
killed,
there's
injured,
one thing
maimed,
that I think we
other
need to do
as a
as we
result of this
approach the
incident after the verdict?
moment, and that is give our viewers
Yeah, that might happen.
a chance to sort of relive some of those iconic moments of this trial. And no one knows this better than you in terms of
Weston
our
says,
team
no
here.
matter how it goes, both
Give us
sides
a-
will carry
a
tampered
sort of
jury
Reader's
because of
Digest
Walters.
condensed version of how
Brim
this
Brim
thing
says guilty
started
is second
and
degree.
up to the point
Maximum
yesterday
sentence is
when
what he
this jury
deserved.
took it on.
Lunger says, even from holding the trial within Minneapolis still to not sequestering the jury and to Maxine Waters, among others, threatening the verdict like the KKK used to back in the day. That's true. She did threaten the verdict. She threatened to raise all kind of hell. And honestly, I think Maxine incited violence way more than Trump ever did. Of course, Maxine has a history of that.
I think about the 911 dispatcher watching on her television screen how this all got started, watching that deadly arrest at the time and being so concerned. She called the sergeant that night, and then the way the prosecution spun that tale into their closing argument, that even at the heart of this case was never about taking on the police in general. This was
Jacob
the
S.
state
says
of
buffering.
Minnesota
Is it still buffering
versus
out there?
Derek
It doesn't look
Chauvin.
like it
And
on
they
my
proved that
second
point by
laptop since
saying,
I switched to
some of
this
these
different view.
eyewitnesses who were
It's a
angry,
lot
were
less
agitated,
processor
frustrated,
intensive.
who were
I'm going to be
concerned,
getting
you know,
a
their first call was to
newer,
do. After they
more
witnessed what they
updated
did,
laptop
it was
that's
to the
actually
police. So
designed
it's
for
gonna
video.
scurry the
You know,
911 operator,
pretty much a gaming
Donald
machine,
Williams,
so
the
I can run
MMA
this live
fighter
stream. That's
trained
going to
in
be
chokeholds,
here in the
who's
very near
watching
future.
What he thinks is a blood choke going down on the street.
Robert
begging
Rose says,
Derek
at the very
Chauvin,
least,
yelling,
40 years
screaming
in
him to get
prison.
off. You know,
Mr.
had
S.
some
telling
other choice
protesters to
words,
disregard
but,
the curfew is a
the
very
witness
dangerous
testimony from the
act.
scene, I'll never forget
Mike
Charles
says, glad
McMillan, of
Maxine's
course,
words mean
the
nothing, but when
elder
you're
on the
Trump,
scene there,
yeah.
encouraging George Floyd to comply, to get in the squad car, and then just breaking down.
The prosecution failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt how Floyd even actually died. The murder charge were dead in the water. You would think so. Because from what I understand, the coroner did say that he did not die as a result of the restraint. However, you have to understand that there are politics involved here, and there have been. That's what this entire last year of unrest and riots and was ostensibly about. So, and again, I have to say, in all fairness,
did Martin Tobin really put on,
I think Chauvin
display of
played a part in a man's death.
Walking this jury,
but again, that's me.
Thoughts were
because I know what he should have done.
And,
I know how he should have done it.
The lack of oxygen George Floyd was taking in is pinned to the ground. George
exactly.
Floyd trying to literally breathe with his knuckles and the like.
Exactly.
And then, of course, the defense doing its best to bring out some other thoughts and processes, you know, questioning. And it's good to have a system that challenges one another, where a jury ends up being the unbiased
Jermaine Barnett,
KSG
KSG Nation says, people, please open
unfold
your
here.
eyes. We
The
are all
defense
humans
had its
created by
chance
one
to explain
creator.
what was going
We all
on.
get sick,
Derek
died,
Chauvin's
and have ups
training, what an objectively
and a
reasonable
judged by
officer
God.
would do in the totality of the
You are correct, sir.
situation.
We are all
so it was
human
a beautiful
beings.
system that played out before us over the last month plus. You guys know I love being at the courthouse for these very reasons. This is people's lives.
Robert Rose and
that
Brim
are
Brim are
at
both
stake
calling for
here.
40
Derek
years in
Chauvin's
prison.
future. The Floyd family here was so much at stake with what we're about to hear. I do want to just turn, just because I kind of have a bird's eye view from where
Fine Ape says, I got the Mosin and marshmallows ready. What did I miss?
Below,
Nothing yet.
At the south side of the Hennepin County Government Center.
A-Dub says, just got here. Are we getting free Nikes yet?
There, but of course,
Lunger says, a lot of people are super emotional, and it seems to be forgotten that you're innocent until proven guilty. Chauvin didn't need to prove his innocence, only present reasonable doubt. Very true.
They had some extra fencing, right? We all know the whole building was fortified, but then they had
Would you say it's a mix of chives
at
and
different
fentanyl?
spots where they could close
Not sure what you're asking.
blocks to kind of
I want to know what the ratio
more
a
of
Democrat
shield to
Republican is on the
downtown,
bench. I can
City
see
Hall,
many
the Hennepin
Democrats
County
just
Government
saying
Center.
guilty to
So in
say they
Courtney's
are
last
woke
report, it sounded
and are
like
not
they must
concerned
have
about
closed
justice.
down, one of those extra barricades there. But
Weston
it's a really
says, I think he
interesting,
did too.
vantage
There's
from
no
being
way
up
you can
here,
say a
because
knee
I
on the
do
neck
see
for
people
8+ minutes doesn't do
flocking,
something.
to the government
Drugs or other
center
breathing
behind
issues
me to be
aside,
here
it
for
was
this
pure
historic
negligence.
and,
Yes, it was.
global, impactful moment.
His fellow
There also
officers
is sort
were
of a mass
trying to get
exodus,
him to let
that's
up.
happening.
Brim
Of course,
Brim
where I sit
opines that it is
firsthand,
murder, clear as
heading in
day.
this direction would
I don't
be
think
your
it's murder. I
state
don't
getting
think he
on
intended to
35W,
kill the man.
and if you head,
But
the other way
the
towards
man's death, I think, was
394,
at least
there
in
is this
part
sort of exodus out of
a result
downtown.
of his
And with me
actions,
earlier
because
when I was speaking to
see
criminal
my
defense
earlier
attorney
comments
Ryan
about
Pasiga,
positional
who
asphyxia.
offices downtown. His
So
employees all had go
you know,
bags,
he should be
from
found
their
guilty of
office
negligent
up on the
homicide.
27th floor of a nearby,
Absolutely agree on that.
tower. For this very moment, they grabbed their
Brim
stuff
Brim
and
says if
left.
Chauvin
We know they
gets
cleared out
convicted, his
government
buddies are
buildings,
going to
the,
prison
federal
right along with
courthouse
him.
on the other side of the Hennepin County Government Center.
Phantom
They
Hemi
cleared
says
out
people seem to
everybody. They
forget
are
someone
very
isn't
concerned
guilty
about
just
what
because you
comes
don't like
next,
them.
guys,
Very
after
true.
this verdict is read. The preparation has been done.
Chauvin
Is
aside,
everybody
says
ready?
Lunger,
We will
who
see.
else is looking
You're
forward to
absolutely right,
Floyd
Paul. Two
riots
resounding
part
questions
due?
as of yesterday. What will this jury come back with?
Brim
And what will
Brim,
happen
as he
after the
keeps
verdict is
saying,
read? Those are the
says
things
Chauvin
that,
can finally have
we're
good
anxiously
old-fashioned
waiting
knife
for.
fights
As
with
you
black
can
men.
imagine, we do have Sky Fox 9 up there in the top left of your screen. as
Road
you can
King
see.
says they want to
And
make an
Paul
example
noted
out of
that
him.
the
That's the
crowd of
goal.
people is beginning to grow outside the Hennepin County Government Center. There's 4
Jacob
boxes
S.
there, 38th
asks
in
if
Chicago
Chauvin
in the
was the
lower
one who
left.
was kneeling on
And of
Floyd's
course, then a
shoulders and
ground
neck.
view of
Yes,
outside the
that's
courthouse
Derek
here in the
Chauvin. That's
plaza,
who's on trial
and
right
the
now.
Courthouse, the courtroom inside that courthouse right there.
Latoya
And that is
says
the
they
one we'll
need to put
focus
him
on
under
as
the
this,
jail.
Jury comes back with its verdict. We'll go full on that.
Brim Brim says
We'll hear
people
every
seem to
second
forget
of it,
tyranny will touch
when
us
it
all.
happens, and we're told it should happen before
I don't
4
think-
o'clock.
Yeah,
I
waiting
don't
for
think
that in the
that's
next
going to be the
20
case with
minutes or
my
so.
audience,
Also just
Brim
wanna
Brim.
make note
We
that
are pretty
this is
much
a trial that was televised
definitely
for the world to
anti-tyranny.
see, to understand
So,
the process,
you know,
to hear the
we
testimony
stand
day
with
after
that.
day from jury
As I
selection
said,
until closing argument.
as I've said
And so today we
for
will
the
see
whole
the
last year,
verdict
ever
being
since this
read live
happened,
as
I
well.
think Chauvin
Something that
is guilty
is a
of
glimpse
negligent
into the
homicide.
courtroom that, we
I
don't
disagree,
often get.
however, with
You're
the
right, Kelsey.
burning
I mean, it really
and
is
rioting
hard
and,
to
and
overstate the
looting
magnitude of this
and
moment
destruction
as
of
we
businesses who had
and the
absolutely
nation and
nothing
the
to do
world
with this
wait for this
and
verdict.
all
We
of
wanna
that.
Bring in our legal analyst, Lee Hutton. Lee, along those lines, I mean, a big question for you here. What's at stake?
Well, I'll break it
Phantom
down
Hemi
into
points
two
out that
comments.
murder
The
is
first
defined
comment
as
is
premeditated.
Minnesota
Exactly.
is going
That's
to
why I
show the
don't see
world
this as murder. I
their
don't believe
reflection of leadership.
Chauvin went
Attitude
into it
reflects
with the
leadership.
goal
So
of
if the
killing
verdict is acquittal,
Mr. Floyd.
we're
I
gonna be
believe that
believers
Mr.
in
Floyd
that
died
decision.
in
If
at least a
it
partial
reflects
result
conviction, we'll be
of
believers
Chauvin's
the same.
negligence.
And it's ironic that both sides,
Oh,
the
we got a
state
squibby
and
here.
the,
Let me
defense,
turn this down a little bit. How's it going, Squib?
the definition of humanity.
It would be going better if I would get your notifications maybe a little bit easier. Not that it's your fault. Something's been going on for the past couple weeks about getting your notifications.
This is
I don't know.
big is a certainly understatement. I would say.
How long have you been live? What did I miss?
Our souls. This decision will reflect how the rest of the world is in their.
You haven't really missed much. We're just kind of waiting for the Chauvin verdict to come on. I mean, they're talking about it, but the court has not read the verdict yet.
Why don't they just declare it a mistrial because what's her face in California wants to go to a state she doesn't represent and stir up trouble?
Now, you know that isn't going to happen. That might happen on appeal. She may have given Chauvin an out for his appeal, but you know that ain't gonna. The judge would have had to have declared a mistrial, and while he came awful damn close, he didn't.
Well, then I guess I'm going to lump him in with the rest of the judges. The ones that wouldn't see the overwhelming evidence that showed widespread election fraud back in November. But I mean, hey, whatever. Judges, you can't remove them. That's something I'd like to see change. If we ever made major changes to our country's laws, something where the people could remove judges all the way up to the Supreme Court with something as simple as enough signatures on a petition, verified signatures.
Yeah.
I just think they have way too much authority, whether they're a magistrate in some traffic court or they're all the way up to SCOTUS. I just think that they don't answer to anybody, and that's part of the problem. Where's the checks and balances?
Who doesn't answer to anybody exactly? I kind of lost that. Judges? Well, they answer to the voters.
No,
unless you're talking about the appointed judges at like the federal level and whatnot. But
okay, like the judges in my area, vote for no more than 5, and guess how many there's always there? 5.
Yeah, but you don't have to vote for any.
Yeah, they still automatically get in, duh.
Well, yeah, that's true.
My thing is, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, as a patriot, if I want to start a petition drive to get a judge removed where I live, or one that controls my district, or at a national level, I should be able to do that. And there's nothing in our Constitution for that.
Right now, they're out there in the chat arguing about whether or not Chauvin murdered Floyd or was merely guilty of negligence. I come down on the negligence side. I don't think he intentionally went in there looking to kill Mr. Floyd, but I also believe that Mr. Chauvin had a he didn't do it the way he should have done it, and his actions are partially responsible for the man's death. Again, anybody wants to look up positional asphyxia, you should. And as a former trainer in use of force and whatnot, and physical restraints, I can tell you that I would be very surprised that if he was not trained in how to avoid positional asphyxia.
We already discussed this on your show one night. That department's policy is it's good to go. Your department's policy was it's not good to go. It's a difference in policy. It's like when you cross state lines with a firearm and they have different rules. You got to follow the rules once you're in that jurisdiction. So if their department said this is okay, then it's okay. I'm not saying it's necessarily right. There's lots of dumbass cops out there who do dumbass things on camera, and it's our department's policy. That's the way we were trained. Okay, there's a certain point where you got to use some common sense. My thing is, why didn't they just hog tie him and toss him in the back of the cruiser? I've seen that on so many episodes of Cops where they bind a person's arms and legs because they're resisting or they're fighting or they're trying to break out the window or whatever. Toss him in the cruiser and drag him into into jail. I just don't understand why my thing isn't so much that he put his knee on his neck or on his shoulder or did whatever. It's that he had him there for over 8 minutes, I guess. Why? What was he doing? Waiting on backup? And why didn't they try something else? I know that piece of crap that instigated this whole thing, he asked to be put on there's evidence that says he asked to be put on the ground. They gave him what he wanted. So right then and there, they should just throw it out based on that. But whatever.
Well, at some point here, it's supposedly between now and 5, we're going to find, 5 Eastern, I don't know what time it is, whoever you are, happen to be. We're supposed to find out exactly how this is going to come down based on the jury's verdict. So, yeah. Pickle says, I don't think he started the day with the intent to kill someone. He ended up killing someone due to straight effing up. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see him losing his job and his benefits over this, being blacklisted where he could never work law enforcement again. As far as actually, facing any sort of criminal charges, no. And the family's already cashed in on this, even though I think that's horse shit. I'm not saying that 2 wrongs make a right, necessarily, but we shouldn't even be wasting our time talking about this. This should be a non-issue.
Yeah, but it is. That's Jacob S. is asking for the audio for the TV. I have it turned down right now. When it gets up to something important, I will definitely turn it back up. I have it turned down to facilitate the conversation between Mr. Squibb and I, as well as the conversation with Nightstrike, who just joined us. How you doing, Nightstrike?
I'm doing good. Sorry I'm late. Had to pick up groceries. You know how it goes.
There is no late, brother. Show up when you can get here. That's all right.
But
hey, Fuzzty Fork 8 joined us. How you doing there, neighbor?
I do want to mention something on the whole George Floyd thing, okay? One, I hate that they're acting like he's some second coming of Jesus or something when the dude was getting arrested because he had a prior record and he had a warrant for his arrest, okay? So he's not a saint, one. And two, yes, I get he didn't deserve to die. 100% agree with you. They used too much force, okay? I agree with that. But again, at the point, this comes to a crossing point at, when is too much force unnecessary when trying to apprehend a criminal? And that's what this is all about. This is really what this is all about.
Well, here's the thing. One of the bedrock foundational principles of our legal system is that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Now, that applies to the criminals, too.
It does.
It applies to the criminals. It applies to Chauvin. It applies. I get you, but just because you're being arrested for something does not mean you're guilty of something, and it does not mean that they can use whatever the hell force they want to take you into custody. They can't kill you to bring you in unless you're an imminent threat to somebody right then and there.
Wait. Roll it back. Budget, yes or no? Do you agree with resisting arrest?
I don't think it's smart.
Okay.
No, Squibb has a point. If you resist arrest, that proves that you feel guilty, or it shows the cops that you're guilty.
When you resist arrest, believe me, I don't want to get arrested for something I didn't do. If all they know is somebody driving a blue pickup truck just robbed the bank and the cops pull me over with guns drawn because I'm in a blue pickup truck and I've never committed a crime, I'm going to be mad as hell. I'm going to be cussing those cops out. I'm going to be doing all kinds of stuff. But I don't know that I'm necessarily going to resist arrest. Yeah, I'm going to get my day in court, or they're going to figure out that they got the wrong person, and then I'm going to get Jeffrey Feiger and I'm going to own that fucking police department. But besides all that, there's a time and a place for that, and this guy made a poor choice. This guy is just as responsible, if not more, for his demise without even looking at all the drugs and the fact that he's a criminal and all the other stuff. It's the fact that he resisted. If any of these left-wing groups out there that are trying to divide the country and trying to make us all hate ourselves because of the way we were born wanted to do something useful, instead of coming up with all this BS and saying we need to have riots and burn the city down and make people pay and reparations, all this, they might be teaching people to stop resisting arrest. They also, in the same sense, might be calling for law enforcement to have different training. I don't want to say better training, different training. There's a time and a place, and then there isn't a time and a place. And like when those cops were pulling that Army lieutenant out of the car and they tased and all that stuff, the way they handled it was terrible. Now, of course, that officer didn't handle it very well either. But that's an example of bad police work. That's an absolute total example of bad police work, and we see lots of that. We don't ever really get to see all the examples of good police work. The news doesn't want to report that, just like they don't want to report when the good guy with a gun stops the bad guy with a gun. So I understand it's very easy to be judgmental. And when I think about my experiences with law enforcement, the very first thing that comes to mind is every negative experience, not the positive experience, but they have been there. We can't crucify all cops because of the actions of this guy, but I also don't necessarily know that this guy is as wrong as everybody says, at least not in my opinion. I'm not saying he's a hero or whatever. Like I said, I think maybe he should lose his job, lose his benefits, maybe be blacklisted or something like that. But we're dividing the country over some shitbag that died because he simply didn't follow commands, whether he's under the influence of drugs or not. He's the one who put those drugs in his system. So it's his responsibility. End of story. There shouldn't be a trial. Everybody who sets fire to the city should go to jail. And we should be doing something about getting politicians out of this. What? I don't know. I don't really know that we have the power to get the politicians out of here. But look at what's going on over a criminal. I'm wasting my breath right now over a piece of shit who threw his life away. What is wrong?
Criminal that does the stupid stuff. We're not talking about law-abiding citizens going and trying to cash a counter $20 bill. We're talking about criminals who do criminal shit, sit there and get chased by the cops, and then they'll say, justice for whoever. If you had one,
Hey, Jesse.
if you point a gun at a cop, you wouldn't have got shot. If you didn't sit there and break the law to begin with and then act like an idiot, things don't happen to law-abiding citizens. And when they do, they act like respectable law-abiding citizens without getting into this kind of crap.
Hey, Jesse, I think the robots you have holding Tardot prisoner are interfering with your phone. I can't understand.
My point was okay. Yeah, this is going to be a yes or no. Budget. Do you think that the cops that did this used too much force? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not.
I agree.
I think the level of
too much force.
I think the level of force they used was.
Squib shows a point.
Hey, Night Strike. I think that the level of force that they used was appropriate, but they applied it incorrectly by putting pressure on the man's airway, by putting pressure on his chest, the way that they did for a prolonged period of time.
But Squib still has a point that maybe the method of training they received to subdue a suspect was the incorrect way. That's what, and maybe there's a better way. And that's what Squib is trying to get.
All right, hold on a second. Listen, fellas, I want to make sure everybody out there in the chat understands something. Again, disagree all you want. Be a dick, you're gonna get banned. Flat out. If my mods have to time you out twice, I want them. Listen up, mods. If you have to time somebody out twice, tag me, notify me, and I'll ban them. Because I'm getting a little bit tired of the trollishness that's going on out there. So, yeah. All right. As a matter of fact, I got one candidate right now for na 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 na. Hey, goodbye.
Okay, Night Strike. How about this? If this was somebody with a spotless record, no drugs in their system, no priors, maybe a speeding ticket or a parking ticket or some silly crap like that, but nothing in their record. This was somebody who wasn't resisting arrest, who was cooperating. They might be going, "You got the wrong guy. I don't know what you're talking about," or whatever. So,
It's what were the circumstances at the time, and again, it is my opinion that Mr. Chauvin was negligent. Obviously, there are those who are saying, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You get what you asked for, and there you go. But our opinion.
I'm not saying that the cop he doesn't deserve to at the very least lose his job and get kicked off of the force. At most, if they say he murdered the guy, then guess what? That he has to fight that in court. That's his problem.
Well,
but again, he's the one that decided to apply unnecessary force.
Well, the only people whose opinions matter are the 12 men and women on that jury, and hopefully they read us what they decided here real soon.
I don't want to see any violence against the jurors. I don't want to see any violence against anybody in the court system or law enforcement or work for a city because of this. I don't want to see any violence against any politicians that are saying, why are we so divided over this? I don't want to see. And the thing is, there is a good possibility that people are going to be intimidated in doing the right thing or the wrong thing because of the threat of violence. The other thing is, any shitbag who goes out there and starts rioting and looting and committing arson and other crimes in the name of whatever, they're going to say, to get justice or whatever, you're worse. You're worse than that cop that leaned on his neck for over 8 minutes. You are worse.
Yeah.
Because you know better. You're not in a position where you're dealing with somebody. You're not you're choosing to go out there and commit crimes and smear this guy's name. If his family gives two shits about him, they wouldn't be necessarily looking as much to get an award from the city. Although, you know, depending on the situation, I can see why it's a good thing or a bad thing that they get awarded something. But they should be out there on TV going, stop burning the city down, stop smearing our son's name, stop.
Yeah.
Don't listen. And they're not. And
They're not,
And
because they're capitalizing on his death.
how many times in these situations do we actually see a survivor or families from a situation get on TV and say something like, can't we all just get along? We just don't see it they don't do it before the city burns down or whatever. These people are worse than the law enforcement people that they say are bigots that they're trying to vilify, because they have an opportunity to make a difference and they choose to stand down because they don't care. They're self-centered. And if you don't agree with me, I don't care. You can come on one of these shows and run your mouth too.
That verdict aside, that the testimony given during this trial could have the potential to change the way that police, the use of force specifically.
Potentially, it's interesting.
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up to the
This isn't the way we do it anyway. So the question is
people. I'm telling you, if you got to be timed out more than twice, you're done. I'm blocking you and hiding you, and you are no longer around. So
You got to figure the trolls see that you're live on this, and they just want to.
Oh yeah.
Troll. They don't give two shits about the situation or even the conversation. They just want to give you shit.
But it's another thing to look at.
Sadly.
And with what continues.
I'm sorry. I just had to say something.
Mr. S wants to point out that this agency does not allow restricting the neck with a knee when in a group setting. This is against their policy, plain and simple, which is very, very true.
And as I said, if he used unnecessary force, and the jury says, well, he used unnecessary force, he deserves to be punished, then you know what? There we go. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I mean, and then everybody's happy.
What do we have in here right now? We got Gunpowder Beauty still here, Pickles with us, Night Strike, and Squib. All right. Just wanting to, go through the scorecard and see who we got.
What was the first thing that sort of is the bellwether moment?
Oh, there we go.
For a juror.
But I'm not against law enforcement seeking other avenues or other ways of training to subdue suspects in a way that doesn't result in their or the suspect's death.
They wouldn't be on the jury if they were deep into it. Second is,
Regardless of whether the person has a record or not.
Foothills maintains that Maxine Waters is many things, but she didn't say anything wrong. I would have to respectfully disagree. I believe that what she said was incitement to riot. What she said was a very thinly veiled threat against anyone who would find anything other than the verdict that she wanted them to find, just as her calls to violence against anyone from the Trump administration that would be found out at a restaurant or anywhere in public. I think, and not that I was ever a tremendous Donald Trump fan or anything like that, but just bring that up to point out that it ain't the first time she's done this. We even had our president say that he hopes the jury makes the right verdict. So I think one problem that we have is public figures, whether they be celebrities, actors,
They don't know when to stop.
sports people, politicians, they need to shut the hell up when it comes to things like this. So speaking of shut the hell up, let's watch the verdict.
I'm going to strongly, disrespectfully disagree with that person.
In as well, since our court camera is now focused on the judge. It's moments away now from that verdict being read. Let's just stop and listen to see what the judge has to say.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 6. We the jury in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We the jury in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We the jury in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury.
So there you have it, guilty on all counts, which is pretty much what I expected to happen. Gotta say. Now we'll see how, although I do have to say one of the comments out there was entertaining. Foothill Shooter says, enjoy the knife fights with Leon and Ray Ray. I'm pretty sure that's someone I banned earlier with a different account because that person kept talking about knife fights with black dudes. So, yeah. Well, mixed emotions out there in the chat. Some people are cheering. Some people are saying it's complete bullshit. I think it's appropriate. I don't necessarily agree with the first two, but I definitely agree with the negligent homicide verdict. But my opinion isn't one that mattered.
Well, you got to figure they threw that other charge on top just so that people wouldn't riot.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens anyhow. Weston Probst says, so now what? Do we still get new Nikes and an iPad tonight? I'm confused.
No, you don't.
Ados Soldier says, enjoy prison, Chauvin.
You know, quite honestly, you know, he did do, regardless of whether you think he did the right thing or not, he did kill the guy, so he did do the wrong thing. And, you know, when you do the wrong thing, whether you're doing it as a law enforcement officer or not, you know, you got to pay if you do the crime, you got to pay the time. No one, not even law enforcement, is above the law.
Yeah, but he didn't kill him, so whatever.
I just want to say once again, we are listening in here to live coverage from Fox 9 Minneapolis as they have reaction around the Twin Cities area after the jury.
Warsaw says that the only reason they found him guilty was to keep cities from burning. Wants to know if I agree. I don't know. I think that they found him guilty because they thought he was guilty on the negligence anyway. They may have.
No, they threw him under the bus. Look, the guy is not a saint. I'm not saying he's, like I said, if they want to do things for conduct unbecoming or whatever, they even want to press certain charges. They're guilty on all counts. They did it to appease certain
Mad
people.
Sexy says this is where no one wins.
And
Squib, you very well might be right. You very well might be right. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I wanted to say that.
But that's not justice. If that was the case, then we need to go back through history and overturn a whole bunch of rulings because they didn't appease people. They were just trying to do the right thing or trying to follow the letter of the law. Like I said, this guy is not like some sort of angel that walks on water. But I think this was all political, and that sort of thing has happened in the past before, and it's crap because our country is better than that. So when our country stoops to this level, it's just disappointing.
We have
It just
Lee
is.
Hutton on standby with his reaction as well. Lee, you and I
Now,
from
the real interesting thing will be to see what happens today, this afternoon, and this evening and tonight in Minneapolis and all across the country as to whether or not there will be riots and looting and burning and all of that jazz with everybody else. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. We get double squib. Wow. Let me remove one of these. There we go. Oops.
Double squib.
Woohoo! 2 squibs for the price of 1. Yay!
It's a bargain special.
There's only one good thing about when they have the riots. When they burn an entire car lot, that's a lot of new cars that we'll be making. Other than that,
that's true.
That's about the only silver lining I can find.
It is good for the squib business, isn't it?
Yep.
So what do you guys think? Gunpowder? Fair verdict or not?
You want my honest opinion or, PC version?
Hey, I didn't ask you because I want you to bullshit me. Don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining.
Okay. Well, in all honesty, I think it's a fair verdict because he did what he did and there needs to be accountability. But I also think that his city pretty much sacrificed him to the wolves to hopefully save a city. And I'm probably going to bet $20 that stuff still gets burned down no matter what.
I will agree with you on all counts. I think that I don't necessarily know that the jurors did it to keep everything from burning, but I know damn well the politicians in his city did. Pickle, what do you think?
I don't know the definition of some of the different murder charges he was convicted of, so I can't really, like I was saying, like I said in the chat, I don't think he went out of his house that morning with the intent to kill somebody. But in that situation, I think he royally messed up on all counts, and that's how he ended up killing a guy. So, if that's what the case, guilty verdicts were saying, then great. If not, I don't know.
Night Strike, what's your opinion?
Actually, kind of the same as Jesse's. So.
And last but most certainly not least, Mr. Irascible Squib, what do you think?
If they had, you said guilty on all counts, correct?
Yes.
If he was not guilty on all counts, he was guilty on some, not guilty on the others, I would say that they did the best they could or that it was objective. But just the simple fact that he's guilty on all counts means that these jurors are afraid of their lives, or afraid for their lives. Maybe they got death threats. Maybe somebody had a talk with them. maybe their decision was tainted by some of the things that have been said on TV or some of the things that have been happening. I don't know, but the fact that he's guilty on all counts means somebody is trying to save their ass and they threw him under the bus. Now, once again, like I said, he's not a saint. He's not a saint. I could see them saying that he's guilty on some counts, but I just don't know that guilty on all counts is actually fair, impartial, and our system doing what it was intended to do. Just my opinion. Otherwise, I think they did it to minimize the amount of damage, but I am interested to see, just like when your sports team wins a game and you decide to burn down the city to celebrate, are people going to burn down the city to celebrate? If so, they're twice as bad as what I said earlier. They're twice as bad as somebody who riots because they didn't get their way. If you riot because you got your way, you're twice the moron of the week.
Yeah. And I hadn't considered the part, what you said about the guilty on all counts. I think a more appropriate verdict would have been not guilty on the murder 2 and the murder 3, guilty on the manslaughter, because I believe it was a case of negligence. But again, ours were not the opinions that mattered. So
and I could support you on that as well. And it's not, and full disclosure, for me, it's not a black and white thing. It's not a thin blue line thing. I think that's more trouble than what it's supposed to do. I think this is just about a right or wrong thing.
Yeah, always. That's how it should be. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for coming and being part of the panel, guys and lady. And thank you very much for being out there and watching this. Even those of you who had to get smashed with the band hammer, I think this is the most I banned people in live streams, and I think it was just the same guy with a lot of sock puppets. But hey, I gotta admire you for your persistence anyway. So you know what, folks, if you're anywhere in a major city, hunker down or get out tonight. That's all I can tell you. Take care of yourselves until we have the next one, folks. Let me get the outro going.
Shout out the infringed.